And here we have Samantabhadra, or the Hierophant, or the Hierophant, or the Hierophant, depending on how you pronounce this word. We all seem to do it differently. Samantabhadra is thought of as a primordial Buddha. And he's also regarded as the sort of primordial Buddha that is generally shown on iconography with Manjushri. Yeah, very frequently shown in iconography with Manjushri, which, if they were shown together in iconography, interestingly, they would be shown with, in the way that we do succession, right? So a number higher up than Manjushri, right? Samantabhadra is also thought of as mostly light. He is also thought of to be the Buddha who holds and embodies. There's so many ways in which this gets complicated, friends, are so complicated. What we need to know about Samantabhadra in order to read this card and make sense of it is that he is a bridge. He is the Bodhisattva of sacred offering. That is the way that he's being used or thought of in this deck. We could also say that through Samantabhadra, we are able to connect or bridge heaven and earth, also in the Tibetan Book of the Dead as well. So he's more, I'd say he's less of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is an embodied being, or a being who is able to emanate into our plane of existence in order to enact enlightened action in the world. So when any of us as aspirants on the path attempt to generate bodhisattva or cultivate bodhisattva as a quality, we're hoping to emanate as, to develop these energies so that we can bring them into the world. Almost like channeling. We could say it's almost like channeling, except that ultimately we're never separate from it, if that makes any sense. We have access to it. We just need to cultivate that, right? So he is a primordial Buddha. He is naked because of that. So he's almost always shown without any kind of ornaments or clothing. He's a naked guy because he is that pure. He is pure light. He is a pure primordial light that pervades everything. And again, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Samantabhadra is who we are sort of consulting with, right? In some respects, he rules over the whole of the Sambhogakaya heavens, right? Which is the middle realm. What else do we need to know about him? He's our link with something higher, with something beyond. I think we're supposed to view him here as an intermediary, which is interesting. And there's not a whole lot else to say, really, about his iconography or about, what else he represents. He's sort of the purity of the Om that's there. If we're embodying, let's put it this way, if we're embodying and or finding our own Vairochana inwardly, our own primordial Buddha that's inside, this would be like a primordial Buddha that is basically an entire realm of Buddhas all by himself. How about that? Yeah, all by himself. He is the pure light itself, himself. So that is Samantabhadra. He is a darker blue, or often shown as a darker blue than what we see here. I'm going to do these two together as well, because because it's relevant, right? In this particular image, we have the lovers. but we are specifically seeing the naked Samantabhadra and the naked Samantabhadri, right, which is the feminine. So this is the primordial masculine and feminine. We could say it is what's called in Tibetan a yabyum. And a yabyum is not, I mean, yeah, there are some secret tantras within the schools of Tibetan Buddhism where sex and sexual consorts and so forth are used, are worked with in order to understand bliss from an enlightened and embodied space. Again, I will say, I can't remember who said this. I can't remember who said this. It might have been Lama Tsultrim, actually, that when we in the West take Tantra, you know, the sexual tantric practices from India and Tibet, and we take them out of context without any of the prior training, without any of the prior practice and preparation and everything else, we open ourselves up to a whole world of karmic challenge and difficulty that we may never have anticipated and are definitely not likely to be prepared for. And it's a little bit like eating dessert before, you know, on a regular basis without ever eating other meals beforehand, to ensure that you've got all of the nutrients you need to be able to digest that much sugar, right? You know, eating enough protein and so forth before you jump into that cake is going to be necessary. So I'll just throw that out there. I've had some interesting times explaining that to some people I know who are super duper into the concept of sexual tantra, and why they didn't come right out and call me a prig or a prude, thankfully, but we're curious as to why I was kind of resistant to that idea when this kind of iconography is what's being demonstrated and shown and worked within in Tibetan texts. So I think a little bit of explanation around that is probably also necessary. So let's talk about that. I need to take a sip here. So the lovers is, you know, we're showing this because it is non-dual, right? Because within each one of us, we are united. Think of this as like a yin-yang symbol, right? Where even within the yang, there's a little tiny piece of yin, and within the yang, within the yin, there's a tiny little piece of yang, right? So there's both in each, and each are part of each other. And that, in many ways, oh, Trinley, thank you for your added visual and textual guidance. I'm going to remove you from the desk. It is not dinner time yet. Okay, you got a little while longer. It's all going to be okay. Jump down. There we go. He can't resist. I would say, I mean, as offensive as this kind of gender binary can feel to so many, in so many respects, that even though it is definitely not embodied for the most part by, at least not in my personal experience or the experience of anyone I trust, is not generally particularly well embodied, if at all, by Tibetan culture. The irony is that the deities in Tibetan culture really lay the groundwork and the justification and the naturalization, the normalization of different gender expressions as we are currently seeing more commonly, you know, being embodied openly, I should say. So, as always, I deeply, deeply, deeply hope that I'm not being offensive in the way that I speak about this. I have various friends, students, patients, and clients who embody pretty much every gender expression that and I love and respect every one of them. And I really hold in my heart the space for them to be able to do that freely and without violence, without any, whether it's verbal, physical, or otherwise, right? Or social. But what I think is interesting here is what I'm seeing, what I'm understanding through this type of iconography is that we have a choice, right? As to how we have a spectrum being represented through the binary. The binary within it, when it's conjoined, holds a full spectrum of gender expression and sexual expression, right? And identity. And every single one of them is therefore as sacred as every single other. There is no hierarchy within it at all. Therefore, we have in here every connotation of the lovers as well. We have the choice. We have the choice of how that plays out. Part of that is being represented here by a wrathful Dakini with a bow and arrow. Also, where do we see that? We see that in Tarot de Marseille. So we're paying some homage here to the TDM. This is the destiny. The choice and the direction we choose brings us to our destiny, right? So I think that's all we need to know for this at this point about Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri. Where we don't see the consort, for those who are interested, not that you necessarily need this, but you just never know what's going to come up in a reading. And sometimes this kind of information, having it just kind of playing in the back of your mind, can be helpful, because when it pops up, it's probably popping up for a reason, right, as you read. But where we don't see the feminine pictured in this icon, in any of this iconography, it is because it's implied. Bob Thurman, Uma's dad, he's sort of the Dalai Lama's representative in the United States, and he's a world-renowned scholar of Tibetan Buddhism and Eastern religion. He would say that when we don't see the feminine shown or demonstrated in a particular, like she is here, it is because it's implied. She isn't anywhere here because she's everywhere here, right? She's everywhere. The she contains the he. So literally, what do we see here when we think in terms of just literal heteronormative, cisgender, binary people? She is containing he, right? But that is literally happening throughout the whole universe. That emptiness of expanse of space is where a he can be manifested at all, right? And it's not, it's never the most obvious thing. It is yin. I hope that makes sense. It's a big concept. These are big concepts. But I do feel that they're accessible. They are accessible. And yeah. And in part, he is usually much darker than she is. She is often white, not literally Caucasian white, like human white, but like a white color, like light white. As in the color of the light that she is would be white. But again, both are naked because, they are unadorned, they are energetic beings, and they really are existing in the realm of pure light. Okay. So that is the Hierophant and the Lovers.